If Zohran Mamdani prevails in the three-way contest next month, he would make history as our city's first ever South Asian and Muslim mayor. In June, the city's South Asian community came out in big numbers to support Mamdani in the Democratic primary. Some of them voters who sat out previous elections. But will this support from these communities hold? Mamdani is currently facing some backlash from Hindu nationalist groups here in the city who are trying to paint him as anti-Hindu. Joining me now to talk about the politics within the South Asian community and the South Asian vote in general is Prajwal Bhat. He has been covering this beat for the news site Documented. Very nice to meet you. Great to see you.
That's
in a recent article, you wrote about these Islamophobic attacks that Mamdani is experiencing from some Hindu nationalist groups. They're saying he's anti-Hindu because he has criticized the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. They've spent thousands of dollars. How is this entirely domestic? Does it have a sort of an overseas source, do you think?
It's not entirely domestic in the sense it's not just from New York. There is a small community of Indians that lives in outer Queens, which have, talked about Mamdani and talked about his anti-Hindu views. But the majority of the money that has been spent was by two individuals in New Jersey who believe that, they need to make this point. But before we get into the fact that there is an opposition, we need to acknowledge the fact that South Asians, being such a visible and central part of the election campaign this year is a significant development in New York politics. It's the fact that in the past you could see that Italian or Irish immigrants were a crucial vote, that this time you see that the political power of South Asian communities has come into the fore. And it's not just the creatives or the technical class from Astoria or Greenpoint that's been voting. It's also the people who are, everyday New Yorkers, who have been restaurant workers, who have been taxi drivers, who came out in big numbers to campaign for Mamdani and vote for him.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because you, in your writings, you've identified sort of almost a prior generation who came in the 1960s. They tended to be college educated, much more professional, higher incomes. That's not who many of us see. Who we see now are the cab drivers, the security workers, the nurses, and so forth.
Yeah, there is a large number of working class population from South Asia living in New York City that has been making the city tick for generations. And Zohran Mamdani has had a connection to this diaspora population. He has been part of a hunger strike that's been, that was campaigning for debt relief for taxi drivers. He has spoken up about the redistricting of Punjabi neighborhoods in Richmond Hill. So we're talking about a population that's living, fragmented in the city. Now, you talk about this and you sense that there is a population of Bangladeshi Americans in Kensington in Brooklyn. There's a population of Bangladeshis in Parkchester in the Bronx. There's a population of Pakistanis in Midwood in Brooklyn, which voted in big numbers for Mamdani. And if you look at the election maps closely, you will see a small triangular area in Midwood in Brooklyn where the Pakistani community came out and voted for Zohran. And there's a huge swathe of area outside of it and in neighboring to it where it's a Jewish neighborhood, and it voted primarily for Kumo. So Mamdani's campaign has done a great job of, getting these communities to be active in New York City politics. And this is, I think, the first time we're seeing something like this.
Okay, let me play a clip from my last interview with him. I talked with him about these folks who had rented an airplane and were flying banners and sort of encouraging people not to vote for him. Here's what he had to say about that.
I know that also I'm looking to represent the entirety of New York City. Just yesterday, I had an incredible meeting with Hindu leaders across New York City. And we spoke about a wide-ranging set of topics. We spoke about small businesses, we spoke about Diwali, and we also spoke about that we may have disagreements as it pertained to Prime Minister Modi. And those disagreements do not preclude us from working together to the benefit of this city.
So he's kind of working the politics of his community as any politician would do. Is he enjoying some success there?
I think so. I think if you look at the primary victory, This group that we're talking about that's been opposing Mamdani, they were active before the primary, but they did not have a material effect on the primary. So they've created a lot of noise. There's been a racist and Islamophobic rhetoric to some of the noise that they've created, and it has been happening in the last 2 months that they've been waging a campaign to try and say that Zohran Mamdani is anti-Hindu. But the main bone of contention seems to be comments he made about Prime Minister Modi, and also some anti-Hindu slurs that were said. So Mamdani himself did not say these slurs, and the contention from them is that he's not condemned them enough, and it was said in the background of interview that he was doing. But I don't think that it's had a significant effect on New Yorkers who are voting in the elections, and there's nothing to suggest that Mamdani's popularity is any lesser. He was a big part of the celebrations of the Indian community in the Indian Independence Day in August, and he came out to Outer Queens, and where a lot of these affluent Hindu supporters who would, some of whom were raising these objections against Mamdani were present. But at the same time, a lot of them were lining up for selfies and photos with him. So as on a personal level, when people get to know about Mamdani, they definitely don't seem to be, coming at him gung-ho with these views.
Well, yeah, and worth pointing out, because you've reported on at least one person who is a straight-up extremist, right? I mean, by anybody's definition, and is on lists as having, sort of advocated really extreme rhetoric that could even lead to violence. The city has roughly 450,000 South Asian voters. What issues are most important, other than favorite son status and the fact that he emerges from that community?
The community has been talking about a lot of things. So you can't, you'll have to bifurcate this by national origin, because the Bangladeshi community has been talking about Win Rosario, someone who's been shot dead by the NYPD, and 2 officers were served misconduct charges in this case. And Zohran Mamdani has been speaking about, setting up a department which responds to 911 calls with mental health professionals and not police officers. So this is something that the Bangladeshi community has been actively speaking up about, and we saw a protest in Jackson Heights just last week. Apart from that, there's also been, the redistricting of Richmond Hill, Punjabi areas that Mamdani has spoken about. But more than that, I think not a lot of the South Asian community lives in rent-stabilized apartments, but a lot of them do resonate with the message of affordability that Zohran has been talking about.
Yeah.
So because a lot of them are working-class citizens, are working, to make ends meet, and the fact that it's not only somebody that they can identify with who speaks their language. He has done campaign ads in Bengali and Urdu as well, and he speaks quite good Hindi and Urdu. I've noticed in my interviews with him. So it's not just the fact that they relate with him, but it's also that his politics is great, because Jennifer Rajkumar, if you remember, it was also a South Asian who was up for public advocate in June, but she lost handsomely. So it's also about, the kind of socialist politics that he's been advocating for that's been resonating.
Oh, interesting. Are you saying the same South Asian community did not rally to support her at the same time as they were voting for Mamdani?
Exactly. And it is also because Mamdani comes across as somebody who can unite these different South Asian identities much better than someone else like Jennifer, for example. Because we are talking about 5 different countries and so many different religions and cultures. So Mamdani, the fact that he can speak these different languages, the fact that he can carry these messages in different ways has helped him.
Okay, an intra-group diplomat, one more skill that will, I guess, stand him in good stead as we get closer to Election Day. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you.
Thank you so much.